Welcome to the new and improved ConfigureITDone Podcast. The ConfigureITDone Podcast is now a place where we interview senior thought leaders in the SAP space across Australia and New Zealand, and the aim is to tap into their knowledge so we can pass on their insights to the listening SAP community. Please subscribe to the podcast and like, share and comment across Castos, YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
This podcast is in partnership with the Black Dog Institute, who aim to create a mentally healthier world for everyone. If you wish to donate to the cause, please click the link below.
With my colleague Bethany. How are you, Bethany?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And Bethany's brought along an amazing guest today. Tafadzwa, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you both. Thank you.
Excellent. So the way we kick off these podcasts, these ConfigureITDone podcasts, Tafadzwa, is I'm going to hand you over to Bethany, and she's going to run through some quick-fire questions just so the audience can get to know a bit more about you. And then we're going to go into a bit about your career and learn about your leadership experience within the SAP space. But over to you, Bethany, and I'll set the timer. We've got 2 minutes. Maybe do some quick-fire questions.
Perfect. We'll try to be quick. Now, I've known you for years, Tafadzwa, but I have a feeling there's going to be some nuggets of information that I did not know with these. So what's your full name?
My full name is Sevi Tafadzwa Masamba.
Okay, there you go. So I didn't know that one. And what's your nickname?
My nickname depends. When I was young, my nickname was Taffy. But then when I came to New Zealand, it became Tafs.
That's cute. And where were you from originally?
I'm originally from Zimbabwe, a country in Southern Africa. Yeah.
Beautiful. And how long have you been in Australia?
I've been in Australia for 15 and a half years. And prior to that, I was in New Zealand for 8 years.
Amazing. I think you moved here just a bit before me, actually. And where are you currently working?
I work for Lactalis Australia, which is a company that produces dairy products.
Yes. And what's your favorite music or film? You can pick either.
My favorite probably movie is The Power of One, and I'm not sure whether you've watched it. In that film, we see how one person can actually be the symbol of hope in a community. And I relate to that quite well. Yeah.
Beautiful. And favorite restaurant, if you had to choose?
I enjoy most foods, but I think in my previous life I was Chinese or Asian. I would pick so any Japanese, Chinese restaurant would do for me.
Love that. And I'll just do a couple more. Favorite destination?
I would have to say home. I think someone who is in a foreign country, there's that affinity to always go and visit home. But besides Zimbabwe, I would love to go and visit Italy. I've been there before, and the country is amazing. The architecture, absolutely stunning. Yeah, so I would want to visit Italy again.
100%. And last one, what's a fun fact about yourself that we might not know?
Well, I always say to people, I'm a double, and so I've got a twin sister, and we've done lots of funny things together.
Those are real life.
Pretend to be me.
There's this kind of like psychic twin connection happening. Like all the stereotypes are pretty well true, aren't they?
Absolutely. So many things. And I think actually the other day I said to my partner, I don't know, because I used to have a back problem, and my sister got an operation, and since she got the operation, I don't feel the pain anymore. So I said, I wonder.
It's like mental. It reminds me a bit, Jay, of like, if you look at quantum theory and how nothing in there makes sense at all, and yet apparently it's real. Like there's certain things that just don't make sense, but they're true.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That is weird, bizarre.
But so
I was interested. You work for Lactalis at the moment, Tafadzwa. What's your role? What do you do within there?
For Lactalis, I'm the applications manager. So I'm responsible for looking after all the applications we have that runs the operations for the business to make sure all those applications are up and running. And we support the business day-to-day operations.
Excellent, no problem. And Bethany was telling me before, so you moved here from Zimbabwe to New Zealand, I believe, back in 2000. Was that right?
Yes, it is. That's correct.
And obviously you've built a brilliant career from scratch into the role you've got now at Lactalis. But can you talk us through how you built your career into what it is today?
Okay, so for me, I say probably to tell my story, sort of have to probably go a little bit into my background. So growing up in Zimbabwe and coming from the rural area, there weren't that many opportunities. And so we went to schools back then in Zimbabwe. They had Group A and Group B because we had segregation. It was a country that was colonized by Europe, and you had segregation. So you had B schools were for Black people, which is where I went. Not so many facilities or tools that was actually conducive to an education. However, I think we've always been driven. So when we did our O levels, I went and studied further into advanced level and did math, physics, and chemistry. And we worked so hard. We knew the situation that we were in, and we wanted a way out. So with that, we did the advanced level, which give you an entry to go into university. And usually during the holidays, we would go and visit my mom in the country and come back to the city for school. When we came to collect our results, the headmaster told us that the Canadian international agents had been to the school. They were going around the schools looking for the students who had done well in their results. And they picked my sister and I to go to the... Yes, they did. Well, my sister did better than I, so...
I bet she reminds you of that.
Yeah. So they picked the both of us, and we got a scholarship to go to Canada to study engineering. Amazing. That was life-changing. So from there, honestly, we'd never been to the city center of Harare. And then to look at it, now we are going to a different country. That was a culture shock, but we took it in the stride. We went in Canada and ended up in Hamilton, where I studied computer engineering. Okay. So on completion, we decided to go home. We could have stayed in Canada, but we always wanted to go home and see whether we could make a change, because I think the Canadian government had given us that opportunity to then come back home and contribute to our own community. So we went back home in 1995 and got my first job as a programmer. I worked for a bank supporting banking systems. That one lasted.
Which area of programming was that?
Oh my God, it was COBOL. I don't know whether you know COBOL programming. It's I think very few companies even use it now. Yeah. Yeah, so I stayed there for 2 years. After that, I moved on to PricewaterhouseCoopers as a junior consultant. And that was in their systems implementation department. And so worked there for 2 years. And my sister got a scholarship again to go and study a master's in New Zealand. And for me, I was just looking at it. Working in Zimbabwe then, very tricky in a sense where I think you sort of felt like you didn't have opportunity, although you are actually in a country where it's mainly Black people, but you realize your opportunities were limited. And there was some information that we got to know more about as you worked there. that they actually had different salary scales for Black people and white people. And this is 1995.
Wow.
Not even that long ago.
Yeah. So I think as a young person then, I just sort of felt like you're being discriminated in your own country.
You think it's changed now, Tafadzwa?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think because now I think you've got Black people probably controlling some of the economic sections of the country. But then at the moment, Zimbabwe is going even worse than what it was then. So, yeah. So in that situation, I looked at it and I had talked to the partners in that company that was PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah.
And I then made a choice to say, I made the choice to go overseas. I don't know, as a young person, I had been to Canada. I had not faced discrimination at that level from Canada, from a foreign country. So I felt acceptance more from a foreign country. So that I made that decision to go to New Zealand, where my sister was.
Mm-hmm.
And in New Zealand, got my first job supporting a company that had about 40 people. But from all my previous jobs, I'd always worked for a company that was big. So I wanted to look for a large organization where I had opportunities. And I got an opportunity to work for Carahot Harvey. Back then, it was really a huge company that was part of international paper. And with that, it gave me my first opportunity to work in SAP. So,
so that's where you started your SAP career.
That's when I started my SAP career. That was around 2001, yeah.
So, and then you've been working your way up since then, obviously, because, so what brought you to Australia after that?
Well, okay, probably a boy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I met my partner in New Zealand. He's a Kiwi, but his dad is from Australia. So the family moved to Australia, and for him, he wanted to be with his family. So that's what made me come to Australia. Yeah.
So basically, you're originally in this position where you had to work really, really hard in order to make a name for yourself. Basically, you did that. You got a scholarship, moved to Canada, and then instead of going back to Zimbabwe, you decided to follow your sister to New Zealand, and then fell into SAP eventually after working really hard to get there, and then you moved to Australia.
Yeah, that's correct.
So,
out of curiosity, Tafadzwa, what's your sister doing now?
My sister is actually the operations manager for Abodo, a company in New Zealand that produces sustainable wood for building.
Right. Okay.
very cool. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this podcast actually was I remember last year we were talking about kind of overall life purpose and having this really deep conversation because we're in the middle of lockdowns at that stage and life just seemed, I think we've seen the great resignation happen since then because everybody had this chance to think really deeply about their overall purpose and what they want to do in life. And then we spoke again earlier this year and you were saying you'd kind of found this really beautiful way to weave your overall purpose into your career in SAP, which I loved. So how would you define your purpose in relation to your role?
I think probably for me, first of all, I love my work. And my work at Lactalis is probably weaved into the goals and the mission that we have for our organization. So Lactalis Australia, our mission is to produce nutritional food for the Australian people. So in an effort to ensure that our product gets to reach the Australian families, we need systems, we need processes, and we need to make sure we get those products to people as efficient as possible. And in trying to do that, there are challenges where in supply chain, or is it supply chain challenges? Is it issues to do with systems? For me, it's ensuring that on a day-to-day basis, you're coming in, you are making a difference in the people that you are interacting with. At the end of the day, I think when you ask anyone or everyone what their main purpose in life is, to probably inject a positive energy into the people around you. So as you interact with people, as you come to work, as people contact you, you want to make sure you have a positive impact on whatever conversation or topic you're discussing, whether it's an issue at work. In our position for me as an applications manager is to ensure that our stakeholders are satisfied with the work we are supporting them, and our people as well, which is the people that reports to me, we interact with. It's making sure we create an environment that fosters that growth within people, and we want to make sure when those people come to work, they are looking forward to spending their time at work. So it's creating an environment that fosters relationships, that fosters growth for them, so that at the end of the day, when they leave the company to go back to their families, they are happy that they work for Lactalis. And when they are having conversation at a barbecue, they will say to their friend they want to work for Lactalis because we are here for a purpose to support them and to ensure that we've got a positive impact on their day-to-day life.
It reminds me a lot of this quote from Jay Shetty that I heard last year, and it bounces through my mind every time I speak to somebody, which is you should leave the people that you interact with feeling either the same or better than before they had the interaction with you. And if you're not doing that, like, what is the point,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always say to my son, I say, whatever you're going to say to somebody, is it going to be positive? Is it going to make them feel better? If it's not, then what's the point? So it's really looking at it and saying, even in some situation where it might be negative, the interaction you have with people has to have a positive outcome at the end, even though the situation might start from a negative note.
Yeah, aiming for excellence basically everywhere. Yeah, you go, Jay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, our boss Simon has a very similar leadership trait where he's just got this energy and he wants to install it into his team, like exactly what you were saying there, Tafadzwa. Have you got any examples for any other listening leaders? Like how do you go about injecting energy into your team, or any examples of a positive interaction that you've had where you've turned a negative into a positive? Have you got any examples of other leaders can learn from you?
I think I'll give you an example of myself, a situation that I was in, and that gave me an example of how to probably develop my own leadership. Okay, so in my role at Lactalis, I was already a team lead then. I was working long hours. I was based in Western Australia. And I made a mistake. A really big mistake. And I think probably that's the biggest mistake in my career. And as I was contemplating it, I said, actually, okay, I'm okay even if I were to lose my job over it. Okay. However, my manager sort of understood the pressure that I was under, and he was based in Brisbane then. He flew down to Western Australia for him to be with me and just to make sure that I was okay.
Wow.
So for me, that was leadership to the next level, because he didn't have to, but they made sure. I think they knew that that mistake was made only because it was a lot of pressure, and they knew it was the intent. The outcome was not good, but the intention was good. So And that just it tells you to say it's supporting your people when they are down, knowing that you know the value that your people deliver. You know people are assets to an organization, and one mistake doesn't change the person. So it's that sort of leadership that I try to follow as well, to say, I think it's supporting your people, and it's almost like being that servant leader where you are there to serve your people, and in the end, they're so willing to give their time for you to get the outcomes that you want as an organization or as a department and as people.
Yeah, I love that. Especially that intention piece. It is all about the intention. I remember when we interviewed Amanda Oakenfold from IBM, and she was saying that no one goes to work to burn down the building. Like, no one's got that intention. Everyone's got, not everyone, but the majority of people that you do come interaction with, they've got that intention. As long as that's there, you can work with that. And mistakes happen. Mistakes happen all the time. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I want to concentrate a bit more on the purpose. I loved your life's purpose with your job earlier on. But what advice would you give to others when it comes to finding purpose in their work?
I think it's almost looking at it and say, find something that you love. And I think we get more when we give. So if for you find something that you love, something you are good at, and you then give back whatever, if it's to the community or if it's to the people that you work with, I think that brings more satisfaction and more purpose than anything that you are receiving. So it's really help others develop, help others grow in their career. And for me, I always look at it and I say, for the people that we hire, the people that we get within Lactalis, you want to make sure they grow and lead the organization better than when you get them, because you are developing people. And the more you support people, the more you develop, then it's good for your organization and it's good for themselves as well, growing in their career. So I look at it and say, always look at building others and always look at enhancing other people's life, other people's career, and things will come back to you.
Absolutely.
Good things will come back to you. Yeah.
I think it's easy to kind of get to feel like you're just falling into a loop and a cycle with your role, especially if it's very IT focused, and kind of lose sight of the overall purpose of it. But if you can look at what you're really good at in life, kind of what hobbies do I have, and what really, what really lights a fire inside of me, and then make sure that you pick a career that's associated with that, and then kind of look at what you enjoy day to day. Like for me, I enjoy people interactions. I enjoy making people's lives a little bit better. So finding work for people is very exciting for me. I enjoy communication and, coffee. So if you look at the things that you really enjoy day to day, and then you can weave it into your overall career, I think it's a lot easier to feel like you have a purpose-led life than just, I'm going to go be an ABAP programmer and that's all I do. It's like, no, there's so much more to it if you think deeply enough about it.
Absolutely. And it's looking at it, because if we look at it and say, for an ABAP person, really probably writing code is not going to give you that life purpose. Yes, you get outcomes, but it's really the interactions you're having with people. You're solving people's problems. So don't look at it as writing code. It's writing code to solve people's problems, to meet or to bridge a gap that was there. So we always look at the outcome that you're getting instead of the action that you're doing, because sometimes that action might look purposeless, but the results or the impact it has is huge. And I look at it, even sometimes when you're having discussions with the business, conversations that we have with them, they walk away and come back and say, thank you for that. But it wasn't actually, you haven't done something that you think is big, but because you were the person who was bridging between that knowledge gap that they had. You had two people in a meeting, but because you were there, they managed to understand each other. So it's really those things that you weave into your everyday work that then gives you that purpose, because you are helping create outcomes that are positive and have impact on people.
100%. I think there's also something to be said of excellence, because I can see that that's a big part of your story. You had to achieve excellence every step of the way in order to get to the place that you're at. You know, it wasn't handed to you. You didn't have your university fees paid for. You weren't born into an area where it was easy to achieve. You had to really, really work. And I think because you've learned to attain excellence, that's made finding purpose within your career almost easier to find in a way, because the harder you work, the more satisfaction you get out of your career. And I see that a lot with the really good SAP consultants. If I bring it back to SAP, like there's data migration consultants where you call them and they say, yes, I do this, I've done these projects done. And there's one lady that I know where when I ask her about data, she goes, I love to get into the data. I find it so interesting. I love to fix where it's broken and I love to resolve all the processes. And she constantly studies and upskills herself. So by applying excellence to every little step of her career, she's become amazing. Like she's a gun. And that means that she can solve issues for others so much easier because she's attained that level of excellence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can see it in, for me, you sort of get a different satisfaction as a manager, as a leader, and as a person who is hands-on. And for a long time, for me, that hands-on brings so much satisfaction, drive, to make sure you achieve that top-level excellence that you need for your choice of career, whatever it is. The drive to make sure you've got outcomes. Absolutely. If you've got challenges where you don't have solutions, you are working hard. Late nights. I've worked in situations where it's 3 a.m. I'm waking up, I'm going in and saying, okay, there's the solution. So it's really that drive for excellence when you need to get outcomes for your people, for your organization. And you know, at the end of it, when you have achieved it, you have solved a lot of people's problems. So definitely, that hard work for me, that work ethic that says, I'm going to work for it, I'm going to research for it, I'm going to try to get answers when everybody else might have given up. That's what it leads to people achieving that excellence, that determination to just go the extra step.
That's servant leadership, by the way, Jay, you're very good at. I had a situation a few months ago where my youngest daughter was in hospital for a couple of days and I just was overwhelmed, and Jay just instantly kind of stepped in and took care of everything that needed to be done without me having to give it a second thought. I did not give a very good handover because I was, a mess, and he just resolved everything that needed to be done. And I'm sure worked extra in order to do that. And that's servant leadership, 100%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Family first has to be done. But love to know, Tafadzwa, who's been your biggest inspiration in your career?
I think, okay, for me, I've always tried to come up with a name, but for me, I always go back to my mother. And I think you kind of have to understand my mom and the kind of lady she is. I'll tell you something that you didn't know, Bethany. My mom had 12 children.
Oh, what a woman. Get retired.
And my sister and I are the last ones.
I bet she wasn't expecting to.
No, I think she might, because she had another set of twins already. So this is the second set of twins. That she...
12 children. Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And most of the time, my dad was away working. She raised those 12 children on her own. And this is really like probably for Africa, back then, women were not going to school. So you look at it, and my mom never went to school. She never had an opportunity, and she had a father who had 7 wives. So, so she came from a very hard background, diversity and the challenges, but she sort of built this resilience within her. In that resilience, that working hard, perseverance, sort of she tried to make sure she transferred that to her kids. And I always think, okay, if my mom had been given the opportunity to grow in an environment like that I've been privileged to live in, she would have been a completely different. Her achievements would have been out there. So that's my inspiration, my mother.
You grew up in a situation where it would have been easy to be very traumatized. Like there was a lot of difficulty there, and kind of keeping hold of your sense of self would have been very, very hard. So having a mother figure that could instill that confidence in you is probably not a lifesaver, but it changed your life in a huge way. If she hadn't done what she did, then you probably wouldn't be, here in the current situation that you're in.
Absolutely.
Love that.
You look at it for her coming from a background where she didn't have any education, but she got to a point where she realized the education was very important for her. And for Africans, okay, cows, goats are very important, you know that? And so they'll try to hold on to that cow, to that goat, because that's the symbol of wealth in the village where we came from. But my mom didn't think twice about selling them to send us to school.
A lot of life experience there. Especially with your mother. That's unbelievable. But what advice would you give to your 21-year-old self, Tafadzwa?
Well, the 21-year-old Tafadzwa, I think there's a lot that she could learn from this maybe more mature, world-wise Tafadzwa. I think for a long time growing up, you sort of tried to fit into this mold that everybody tries to project. But then, knowing where I am today, I would probably tell her to just be yourself. Be your authentic self. I think she could have gone a long way if she learned to trust herself and actually go and just enjoy the moment sometimes. I think we, as a young person, my sister and I, we were so driven on getting outcomes such that we actually didn't get to enjoy the moment. So yeah, I'll tell her to just maybe enjoy some of those things.
Love that. If you could see anyone on the podcast, who do you think you would name?
So I've got one of my colleagues, Chain Lee, and she's from Malaysia, and I think she has done so well for herself. Coming from Malaysia, she's one of my team leads, and I think it will be interesting to see what she has and what she has to say. So yeah, I would choose Cheng Tan.
Excellent. I'll leave that with you, Bethany, to reach out to her. It'd be great to have her on the podcast. But just want to thank you, Tafadzwa, for your time today. That was brilliant to delve into your background and how you're in Australia now at Lactalis. That's crazy, that story back in Zimbabwe with your mother. That's it's unbelievable. So good on you, and thank you again for coming on the podcast.
No worries. Thank you so much, both. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Bethany.
Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the ConfigureITDone podcast.